Hello, good morning. I am Lima, professor at Keppe and Pacheco Trilogical College. For those who still don't know, Millennium is now the language center of FATRI and applies the science of analytical trilogy in languages. We are holding this series of talks so that you can apply these incredible findings of analytical trilogy created by Norberto Keppe that unifies the sciences of the philosophy, science, and theology. And you can apply these discoveries in many fields. For those who still don't know, Millennium is now the language center of FATRI and applies the science of theology. Hello, good morning. I am Lima. I'm a professor at Keppe and Pacheco. Vamos voltar? Voltar. Okay. All right. So today we are going to have one more talk about this series on Freud. As we've been saying in the other encounters, Freud, the founder, the creator of psychoanalysis, was a great genius, and he gave a wonderful contribution to mankind when he discovered that behind what we think, there are many hidden elements, contents that actually control our lives if we don't conscientize them. Freud named this phenomenon unconscious, but that is not really unconscious because actually we have consciousness, a broad consciousness. So Norberto Keppe, the creator of analytical trilogy, made a few adjustments to Freud's theories. And this is what we have been talking and studying in this series of lectures, right? The first one, we spoke about the unconscious, that actually there is no unconscious, but consciousness. The other one, we spoke about censorship, meaning the way we hide our consciousness and we try to inconscientize what we know. So we spoke about censorship. Today, we are going to talk about a very interesting aspect of psychoanalysis, and it's named defense mechanisms. So, here is we spoke also about Freud's theories of sexuality, where he believes that every human problem is linked to a sexual content. And he was mistaken in that point. And we spoke about this last Tuesday, if you remember, for those who followed our talk. Because the problems people have don't come from sex, but they come from our censorship of consciousness. Meaning, when we don't want to face a problem, face a difficult situation, then we try to escape, to hide this perception. So this is the root cause of our problems, not sex. So we spoke about that last class, and today, we are going to talk about defense mechanisms. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of our talk today, and then we are going to repeat and go more in depth with the same subject. Defense mechanisms, right? Freud believed that we are attacked by outer elements, family, society, friends, the environment, that we are attacked. And then we have to defend ourselves. But the point here, so he called this ego defense mechanisms, as if our personality had to defend ourselves from attacks coming from outside of ourselves. But what happens, in fact, is that we have consciousness in many situations all the time. So when we are in a situation, we have consciousness of something, we invertedly might feel in danger from this consciousness. We feel as if we are being attacked by consciousness. And then this defense mechanism, in inverted commas, is actually a defense against consciousness. But consciousness is something very important and very helpful to our personality. And then we invertedly defend ourselves against consciousness. And this causes many problems because we are hiding what helps us. Freud didn't perceive this. He mistakenly believed that this defense we do would be a protection to our personality, when in fact is not a protection, is a harm. So this is basically the point of the talk. But let's repeat all this. I want you to possibly participate. If you want, you can write questions or comments, okay? Because here in the YouTube we cannot have speak only by writing. So, defense mechanisms. People could say, but defend ourselves from what? What are we going to defend ourselves from? From personal defense, maybe? Maybe someone attacks you in the street and then you have to protect yourself? Is that what he means by defense mechanisms? Or sports defense. You have two teams in a game, in a dispute, in a match, and one attacks and the other team has to defend. Is it what he means by defense mechanism? Or defense from social violence. Nowadays, violence is so common, unfortunately. So is this what he's talking about, Freud? Social defense or legal defense? You have a dispute, commercial dispute, or a relationships dispute, and then you have to go to court to defend yourself? Or are we talking about environmental defense? Today, with so much pollution, the human being is attacking, destroying nature so much. So are we talking about environmental defense? Or military defense in wars? Or civil rights defense? Or biological defense? Today, we are in the era of COVID-19. So are there viruses attacking us, as many people believe? So is this kind of defense Freud is talking about? No. Actually, he is talking about ego's defense. Ego's defense mechanisms. But then you can say, ego's defense? What's that? Ego's defense. Well, in 1923, Freud created his theory of personality. And in this theory, he divided the personality in three instances, three parts. The id, the ego, and the superego. So in order to talk about defense mechanisms, we have to see briefly what this means, these three parts of personality. So let's start with the ego, the id. The id is the primitive part of the mind, right? And it contains instinctive impulses. So, when the person acts like a child, wishing to fulfill his fantasies, using his will, this is very easy to see in children. When children want to do what they want at the moment. Sometimes they want to eat something sweet just before lunch. Sometimes they want to play late in the night instead of going to bed. It's very easy to see this in children, the way they want to impose what they want and they completely disregard the environment, the situation, the appropriateness of the situation. They want because they want. So this is the id. The id is this part of the personality where you want to fulfill your will, your wishes. And then you totally disregard the reality. You ignore reality. The id is illogical. There is no logic. There is no reason. You want because you want. This is the id. So when we are led by our id, when we are motivated by our id, we live as if we were the center of the world, as if there were no reality, and that everything would have to be according to our wishes. This is the id. But actually, this is not what happens. It's not because of the id. We do this when we are not victims of our instincts. This is played by our will. We are going to see in a future talk the play of the will in our lives and in society. The will has two aspects. If it means perseverance, effort, you have to do a difficult task and you persevere, you continue. This is called goodwill. In trilogy, we consider this the genuine will, when you make an effort towards something useful, real, right? Sane. This is the real will. And there is another will when you want to impose your wishes that sometimes are neurotic, and this we call inverted will. Well, most of the times our will is inverted. Many times we want things that in the end are not good for us, are not useful. So most of the times our will is inverted. So this is what happens here in what Freud called the id, is then we want to impose our will, which is inverted, which is not good for us, is not good for the environment. We want to impose this. Freud called this the id, but we say that this is the imposition of our inverted will, actually. So another correction Keppe made to Freud. Then we are going to talk a little bit about the superego. Freud, so as you can see in this picture to the right-hand side, this is the basis of our morality, the notions of what's right, what's wrong. Freud believed that we learn these rules from society, initially from parents, then from the family, then in school and in society in general. This is a little bit of a mistake by Freud, because morality or ethics is innate in people's personality. People basically know, since we are born, what's right and what's wrong. Of course, some social things can vary, and those ones are social conventions. That's morality, right? That's the difference between morality and ethics. Morality, really, we learn from society because they are rules that are not universal. They are conventions. So this is morality. But Freud believed that society then tells us what's right and what's wrong. Whereas it's not like that. We know it from our essence, what's right and what's wrong. So, according to Freud, this would create a superego. So, superego is when you prohibit things. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. This would be the superego created by society, according to Freud. In analytical trilogy, we consider this in two ways, as I said. One is your spontaneous, natural ideas about what's right and what's wrong. Everybody knows what is right and what's wrong by nature. And the other aspect of the superego is censorship. So when you censor something, Freud calls this the action of the superego, and we call it censorship. And most of the times, censorship can censor what's right and censor the consciousness of what's wrong. So there are these two aspects of censorship. But this is what Freud called superego, and we call censorship. And the other instance, according to Freud, of the personality is the ego. The ego is the idea of reality. So the person has, on the one hand, the id telling you, urging you to satisfy all your wishes. I want this, I want it now. And on the other hand, you have the superego, right? Prohibiting, no, you cannot do this, no, don't do that. And the ego is the part of the personality connected to reality. The ego uses reason, uses what's logical, correct, appropriate. So the ego is the manager, like the trying to find a solution between these pressures. From one hand, from the ego, on the other hand, from the superego. And the ego controls, as we can see in this picture, right? Especially the one at the top, the blue, red, and beige ones. The id wants something, the superego another thing, and the ego having to make compromise, right? So, but according to Freud, this is the action of the ego. But in trilogy, we see that this is a mature attitude. When the person has a mature attitude, a reasonable, affectionate, not allowing oneself to be led by neurotic impulses or by censorship. So the ego is the balanced attitude of taking into account what's useful, what's correct, right? And this is the action of the so-called ego. Okay? So, now that we have seen these three parts of the personality according to Freud, let's understand what he means by defense mechanisms of the ego. Here we have a short summary. Is a repetition on the left-hand figure. You can see the id wanting to do whatever it wants immediately. On the other side, you can see the superego prohibiting, censoring, and the ego at the center controlling the situation. And the picture at the right, again, the same three aspects of the personality. So Freud then says that the ego has mechanisms, strategies to protect itself. So according to Freud, the defense mechanisms are there to protect you, to protect your personality, your sanity. So, as I said before, he wants to protect the ego from what? And then we say, from consciousness. The person, when he has a consciousness, he sees consciousness as harmful and wants to defend, erase this consciousness, oppose this consciousness. And he calls this defense mechanisms. But the consciousness is always good. Even when you have consciousness of a problem, it's important to have consciousness of problems. So, in this case, we defend ourselves from consciousness, and that is not good, right? So, the conclusion is defense mechanisms are actually a harm to the personality because it hides consciousness, which is useful. Okay? Are you following the explanation? Maybe you can send us some comments or even a few questions. Let's continue. Defense mechanisms are not a protection to our sanity. That was a mistake by Freud. Keppe made an adjustment, a correction to this mistake, and sees defense mechanisms as a defense against consciousness, which is useful, and therefore defense mechanisms defend our pathology, defend our problems, and are very harmful to us. Let's hear from Dr. Claudia. Let's see how what she says about that. Let's hear.
Ele é combatido não pelos erros que ele fez, ele é combatido principalmente pelos acertos que ele fez, porque os erros que ele fez todo mundo adotou. Essa questão que o senhor coloca de pessimismo, negativismo, mas nós notamos, Dr. Keppe, que ele é combatido não pelos erros que ele fez, ele é combatido principalmente pelos acertos que ele fez, porque os erros que ele fez todo mundo adotou. Essa questão que o senhor coloca de pessimismo, negativismo, da ideia da pessoa ser vítima, de achar a realidade um sacrifício, a fantasia, uma delícia, de achar que na genitalidade está a solução de muitos problemas. Enfim, uma série enorme de conceitos freudianos foram imediatamente aceitos por causa já da mesma inversão que o ser humano tem. Então foi uma doença combinando com outra doença. Agora, o que o Freud trouxe de certo e de grande contribuição, isso ninguém fala, né?
Principalmente a questão da hipocrisia,
Principalmente a questão da hipocrisia, da máscara social.
Ficava doente porque era hipócrita. Então, mas isso tem relação com o cristianismo.
Tem.
Que Cristo falou que a doença vem pela hipocrisia. O indivíduo pensa, tem uma intenção e revela outra.
Você já passou o vídeo? Ok. Bom, então, como vocês viram, ela fez esse comentário, né? Se vocês quiserem também fazer alguma pergunta, algum comentário, podem escrever, serão bem-vindos. Bom, aqui então nós temos, we have here, I'm sorry, I had switched to the Portuguese version. Let's go back to the English version. The defense mechanisms hide consciousness, which is censorship, and this is an attitude of masking the problem, and this is an attitude of hypocrisy, right? So after you use many defense mechanisms, you can have a certificate of hypocrisy. How about that? Right? People become hypocritical. If you see, if you are in a difficult situation, you have some consciousness, you don't want to face this consciousness, then you have a defense mechanism. You hide this consciousness. Now you have a new mask. Now you are completely hypocritical, right? This is what defense mechanisms are, in fact. So, is it important then for us to diminish this censorship and mask, our mask, diminish this mask and face our difficulties to develop? Take a look at this picture. The old lady, she is trying to imagine herself much younger, more beautiful, like a princess, which is not her reality at this moment. So she's trying to use this mask, she's trying to use this hypocrisy, she's using defense mechanisms. So she's only defending her problem. She's not defending her sanity. Let's listen to Dr. Cláudia again.
Eu acho que se a humanidade perceber principalmente essa questão da máscara que o indivíduo desenvolve na doença, que toda essa patologia que está escondida atrás dessa máscara social, que é a sua inveja, arrogância, megalomania, as suas inversões, se ele perceber, se ele admitir, diminuir a censura para verificar isso, então a humanidade finalmente vai ter a chave, a pedra filosofal da qual ela está precisando, não só para interromper esse processo autodestrutivo que ela está assim, se encaminhando fortemente, mas retomar um caminho de desenvolvimento.
Okay, so let's have some examples of defense mechanisms. Like in this picture, the person is defending herself from some attack. Let's see some examples now in practice. Maybe you can give examples as well in writing, if you will. So, first one is repression. What's regression? Regression is when a person adopts behavior of a child, behavior he had in the past. So, for a very clear example of this is when children, they go back sucking their thumb or needing a pacifier, volta a usar chupeta, né? A pacifier, in order not to face a difficult situation. So you can see that this defense mechanism is not defending the person from a problem, it's defending from consciousness. The person has to face his problems to solve them. And in the defense mechanism, instead of doing this, the person will adopt a more immature behavior, to act like a child, to play ignorance, to say, oh, no, I don't know. It's a defense mechanism not to face consciousness, and that's not good. Another one is projection. When you see your problems on another person, then you say, no, this is his fault, her fault, their fault, not me. You are, again, escaping from facing some difficulty in you that would help you if you faced it to solve it. Another one is called reaction formation. I need to explain this picture here not to generate some confusion. Reaction formation is when you act the opposite as you really think or feel. So it's intention to mask your real feelings. For example, you hate someone and then you start treating the person overly well, exaggeratedly well, because you want to hide from your consciousness that you don't like the person, right? This you form this reaction. In this picture here, you see a guy wishing to push the lady down the stairs. Instead of doing this, which is his will, his wish, he helps the lady. So be careful. This can give a wrong interpretation. It doesn't mean that by nature you hate, and then when you have a good action, this is a falsity. It doesn't mean that, because it's the opposite. Our real feelings are of love, and then we do something wrong when we hate, when we are aggressive. This is false. This is not our real nature. So this picture doesn't mean this. It means that the person doesn't want to perceive his bad intentions, and he tries to pretend he has good intentions. instead of admitting that he has bad intentions to solve the problem, right? So it's a mask, not a defense mechanism. This is reaction formation. Let's see another one. Intellectualization, it's as the name says, when you, instead of being affectionate, being positive, when you have to see your pathological emotions, hate, laziness, bad intentions, then you explain this bad intention in a reasonable form. So you intellectualize. So no, I'm being rude here because it's good for the person to be rude. If I'm rude to him, I'm helping him. So you give a wrong explanation, but it makes sense apparently. So you intellectualize in order not to see your bad emotion, your wrong emotion. Another one is somatization, right? Or when you have this conflict, emotional conflict, some bad intention, and then you transform this into a physical symptom. We call it in trilogy somatization. In this picture, we see a father saying something to his son, and then, which is correct, because parents have to educate, have to show the child his mistakes to help him. But many times parents are inverted. They feel guilty. They think that they shouldn't have done that. And then this is the case in this picture. And the father then got sick because he was feeling guilty, invertedly, because he didn't do anything wrong. But in his mind, he had did something wrong, and then in order to not to see this, not to have this consciousness, he somatized. He got physically ill. Another one is what we call compensation. Compensation, as the name says again, is when you do something not to face a difficulty. In this picture, the child had problems with math or any kind of intellectual studies, so he tries to do the opposite. He'll become an athlete. Obviously, doesn't mean that all athletes do this because of this problem. But in case you do this not to face your difficulties, your studies, and then you go to practical activities to compensate, to hide your difficulty. Defense mechanisms are always to hide some problems we have. The other one is sublimation. Sublimation is when you use negative impulse, you transform this into a good one. A clear example is a surgeon. According to Freud, when a person has this aggression, he wants to cut people, he wants to destroy things, but he cannot destroy because his ethics tell him not to do that. But so where he can vent this aggression, so he will become a surgeon. He will use these negative impulses into a positive action. Then he will cut, but with a good purpose. Of course, Freud was deceived in this, mistaken in this sense. Surgery is not that. A surgeon can be very ethical. He wants to help the person, so it's not a sublimation. But Freud believed that a negative thing can give origin to a positive thing. Look at the inversion. Something negative can never be transformed into something positive. Positive comes from nature, from reality, not from what's negative. So this was the idea of Freud about sublimation. Another clear example is arts. Freud believed that arts were, for example, a painting that he believed that sometimes children, they are aggressive, they like to play with their feces in a certain period of the childhood. And then he says that because the person cannot continue playing with the feces, then he will play with paints. Imagine. What a crass mistake to believe that art, so elevated, so connected to high things, would be just this transformation of negative impulses into positive ones. A big mistake by Freud. Another one is displacement, when you cannot show your behavior to a person who's more powerful than you, then you discharge your attitude into a person who's less powerful. So in this diagram, you can see the lady, she's angry at the man, but because he's more powerful, she cannot be angry at him, so she'll be angry at her son, who's more powerful than she is. And the boy will do the same to the toy, and like in a chain, one person only reacting towards the less strong. This is denial, right? The person denies to face his difficulties. Rationalization is when you offer a rational explanation, not in order to escape from your problem. This fable about the animal that, the fox that couldn't reach to the grapes, and then as she doesn't want to face her failure, then she says, oh, the grapes were sour anyway, to escape from seeing her difficulties. Identification, when you feel you are the same of someone you admire. Like the boy admires the adult, so he identifies. So, we are coming to the end of our talk today. I wonder if you would send me some questions or comments. Actually, many people are sending me notes here. I hadn't seen them. Natalia said, Freud's being very pessimistic. Yeah, it's true, he was very pessimistic. What else? Lilia said, that's incredible. We don't want to see our pathology. Yes. What else? Okay, so here, Keppe, Dr. Keppe, in his analytical trilogy, he found another defense mechanism, but we don't call it defense mechanism, we call it inverted identification. And what does that is? An inverted identification is not good for us. We do this to harm our sanity. Inverted identification is when you see your problems on another person, and the qualities of the person you think are yours. This is very common in like adolescents, for example. They think they know everything, they are the best, they have a lot of experience, they know solutions for everything, and their parents are stupid, ignorant, censored, they don't know things. So in this situation, it's clear how the adolescent sometimes sees his problems in his parents and the parents' qualities in himself. This is called inverted identification in trilogy. As you can see here, the man accusing someone of the problems he has, and in the case of the cat thinks he has all the power and beauty of a tiger, whereas it's only a cat. Okay? Let me see if it's more comments. And so to finish the talk, defense mechanisms of the ego do not protect the person, but causes mask, hypocrisy, and a lot of problems and diseases. So if we diminish our censorship and mask, then we can take care of our pathology, correct our mistakes, and then develop in a good society, right? Let's see Dr. Claudia's conclusion, and then we can conclude our talk as well.
Freud deu essa chave. E agora nós temos que conscientizar os erros freudianos através do entendimento da ciência keppiana, para que a humanidade então possa se beneficiar sobremaneira, não só no sentido da vida psíquica, curando suas doenças orgânicas, sociais, as neuroses, as psicoses, mas também desenvolvendo todas as outras ciências que dependem disso para poder se desenvolver. Então eu acho que o Freud, com Keppe, agora, são um turning point da humanidade. Ou o ser humano se humilha, tira a máscara, diminui a censura, a consciência, admite ver seus problemas, as suas mazelas e se salva, ou então ele está condenado ao próprio à autoextinção. O que Freud chamava de instinto de morte, que na verdade é o que Keppe chama de inversão, uma luta contra a vida, contra a consciência.
Right, so now I would like to invite you for a new course we are having at our Keppe and Pacheco College, Faculdades Keppe and Pacheco. It's a course on emotional competence, leadership to disinvert the world. Good topic, isn't it? In this course is going to take place in 3 months. It's a very short course. You have a certificate by MEC, the Ministry of Culture and Education, and it's an extensão universitária. This is the certificate you get, university extension. That means that you can use this as credits to do a post-graduation course. If you have this course, it's not a post-graduation course, but you can have credits and use later in a post-graduation course. So it's something very useful, and we'll be discussing all the subjects about Freud, the problems of the human being, according to the findings of Keppe, Analytical Trilogy. So I would invite you to have this course. It's going to be an online course. It's a good attitude, a good action when we are in confinement, right? We are all in lockdown. So why not to use your time at home to do something for your future? So join us in this course. It's going to be on Wednesdays evening from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 in the evening, and it takes 3 months only. It's curso de extensão universitária online, okay? So you have the price here is $390. It's going to start on the 10th of June. But next Wednesday, we are going to have an opening class, a master class, to explain the program, what we are going to see in this course, right? So I hope you join us in this new course. Thank you for today, and see you next Tuesday for another talk. Bye-bye.